This is one of the best space games that I've ever played, and honestly, it should be getting more attention. Everspace 2 is Diablo meets Star Citizen, and if that's not confusing enough, let me put it this way. It's an action RPG where you run missions, collect loot, level up, and enjoy the storyline, like any old action RPG. But you can also control a spaceship in total 3D space, and you can bind that spaceship to dual joysticks and a pedal system for some crazy high-scale 6 degrees of freedom spaceship flying. Also, the game's graphics are absolutely gorgeous, and it's loaded with classic space game tropes in the best way possible. So why am I checking out this game now? Well, I've been on a space game kick recently, and I have known about Everspace 2, but it's always sort of been a mystery to me. Whenever I saw the gameplay, it sort of struck me as a bit arcadey and campy to some degree, which, to be fair, it is. But then I saw some articles talking about a recent update that turned on lumen lighting and support for DLSS 3, and I'm a sucker for games that let me flex my 4090. And I gotta say that this game with maxed out visuals at 4K at over 144 FPS is an absolute visual treat. The graphics in Everspace are not aimed at some sort of hyper-realistic sim, which I think to some could be a bit of a turnoff given the current trends of spaceship games. But the game's styling also gives it a lot of freedom to just kind of have fun with the combat and characters and not have to be so hardcore about how everything looks and how it should function. Brightly colored laser beams, massive fiery explosions, shooting asteroid crystals off of space rocks. It's kind of all the classic space game goodness just in a modern package, and I gotta say, I'm all here for it. Now, when I booted up the game for the first time, I was playing on an Xbox controller, which was recommended as the preferred method to play. However, I noticed that I was able to just bind joystick support in the options, so after about 30 minutes of controller play, I connected up my VKB sticks and foot pedals to mimic my Star Citizen piloting controls, and let me tell you, the game really came alive once I had my complete movement freedom. Up, down, left, right, forward, back, rolling, all immediately accessible with satisfying joystick triggers and buttons. Everspace may not have been built from the ground up with sauce controls in mind, but let me tell you, it plays fantastic. Dodging behind asteroids in an intense gunfight to let my shields recharge, strafing and flanking in combat with ease, I really felt like all of a sudden I was the Luke Skywalker of this universe. And I personally ended up enjoying the smaller, faster ships as I felt like I had the control and skill to complement their playstyles. But the big and slow drone boats could be fun as well. Letting drones distract your enemies while you go in for the kill is another totally viable and interesting way to play. And I haven't even begun to explore the endgame levels of combat, which I hear can change up quite a bit once you're doing the game's equivalent of challenge missions or dungeons, what have you. Now, Rockfish Games is the studio behind Everspace 2. Their only other game is Everspace 1, which was reviewed pretty favorably. That was sort of a roguelite variation of this similar concept. Everspace 2 did a crowdfunding Kickstarter back in 2019, and it raised over 500,000 euros. And with that, and I'd imagine some additional funds, they built the game with a 20-person dev team and some help from another outside studio to help create all the assets needed for their fairly expansive world. That said, their studio is absolutely on the smaller side. You could call them AA. 20 employees is not massive when it comes to a dev team for most games, so to see Everspace 2 priced at $50 might seem a bit ambitious. However, I found that the content provided absolutely adds up. The depth of the mission trees, the number of locations in each system, and the huge variety of ships, weapons, and playstyles makes me feel like I'm getting a Diablo game's worth of content, if not more. And to make that Diablo comparison again, this game at its core really is a looter spaceship shooter. You travel to asteroid fields, shipwrecks, secret bases, shipping terminals, major trading cities, and you blow up bad guy ships and take their stuff. Then you equip what's good, sell or dismantle the rest, and keep going. But the mission trees tying all of that together give you some incredibly fun purpose with fantastic pacing. Most areas you fly into will have your primary mission, like defeat the pirate gang or something like that, but then there's also usually a side mission of figuring out how to access a hidden vault or activate something, and the game still seems to let you progress the main quest as fast as you would want to, but generally speaking, the side quests and exploration are just so fun and rewarding that you often find yourself getting pulled off course in some random encounter. The game uses its transit system for this quite masterfully. As you engage your FTL drive and head to the next planet or location on your main quest line, you'll detect signals along the way, which you can choose to explore. Some will be distress signals to help a ship being ambushed, while others will just be unknown locations, and when you show up, a mission or an objective will pop up based on what you find there. And there's almost always something beyond the main objective to do. Whether it's just exploring a little bit more reveals a hidden loot cache inside of an asteroid, or some other sort of secret bunker or base that you need to slot batteries into a power slot to turn on. It just feels like you can engage in that type of content as you please rather than it being forced on you. There's also an incredibly good amount of puzzle-like mechanics built into Everspace, which I'll admit at first felt a little bit weird in a space game just because I wasn't used to having the option to do puzzles in spaceships. But honestly, they do them so well that it was just really fun to have a lot of side quests that turned into puzzles, or how to unlock doors, or where to find the power beacon. One of the quests has you power up a mining laser, and then you have to go pick up a reflective surface so that you can angle the beam to open up a rock face. Like, they have that kind of stuff scattered all throughout the game, and comparing it to some AAA games that rely almost exclusively on one type of minigame, like a hacking minigame, Everspace 2 feels like it's loaded with 20 or 30 different types of fun mini games and puzzles just to keep you entertained. Now, when it comes to the overall story, the game does seem to feel a bit more tropey. Not in an awful way though, because it's a space game that's going for a more comic book arcade feel. The story kind of fits into that vibe a bit, wavering back and forth between silly and serious. Most of the characters are fairly animated and over the top when it comes to their voice acting, but not usually to the point of cringe.
Station is under attack. And the turrets.
Friends of yours?
Yeah, the kind you want me dead.
I could see some people knocking the game for its comic book-like cinematics, but I personally feel that those have allowed the devs to improve the pacing of their storytelling and speed up those complex scenes and not waste their budget with expensive character cutscenes. Something I wish games like, say, Homeworld 3 might have done, put more of their budget into their gameplay rather than their cutscenes. And in this regard, I think Everspace 2 shows a masterful use of the resources at hand. Good enough character cutscenes to serve the game's narrative as needed, while clearly all of their other energy and resources just went into the game's assets. They went for both quantity and quality, and it absolutely shows with the reviews on Steam. Many people pointing out their skepticism with the $50 price tag until they actually start playing the game and realize that the world is massive and there's just tons of stuff to do. Now, as you can see from the gameplay, this isn't even close to being any sort of hard sci-fi experience. And to be honest, that kind of held me off from getting this game for a while. I thought it was going to be so simplistic so that everybody could play the game. It just wouldn't appeal to somebody at maybe a higher skill level or who wanted more depth. But that's absolutely not the case. And while the game is super accessible and easy to play with a controller, the depth and skill set still seems like they scale pretty much as far as you want them to go. With more advanced control options in the settings and ships that respect piloting skill over brute force tanking, the devs seem to be quite aware that their spaceship game could attract a wide audience and have catered the gameplay as much as they possibly could. Coming into Everspace 2 from more of the space sim fanboy side of it, I will say that the game does need Tobii eye tracker support. They have support for Track IR, but Track IR is kind of the old school tech nowadays, with Tobii seeming like it's really the future. And if I could control my view even further with that Tobii eye tracking, that would sort of seal the deal with Everspace being the most accessible game I've ever played that also supports all of my sim gear. I mean, I literally had no issue whatsoever with binding 2 joysticks and pedals to the game, other than having to remember what button B13 was on my joystick. Anyway, as a Star Citizen fanboy desperately waiting for other games to take advantage of my crazy hoe sauce setup, Everspace 2 is an absolute delight, and I'm excited to see what Rockfish does next. I'd be curious to know if you guys have played Everspace 2, and if so, what do you think about it? Let me know in the comments. Let me know what your favorite ship builds are too. I'm looking for some good endgame recommendations. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave me a like, subscribe for more content like it, ding that notification bell to beat the YouTube algorithm with me. And next up, check out this highly recommendable space combat game whose only fault is just not doing more with its absolutely fantastic art style and gameplay. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.